Hey everybody, welcome to Drive Thru Review 677. Today we're going to talk about Sanctum. Now this is a new game coming from CGE, designed by Philippe Leduc, and he is also the designer of a game that came out a few years ago called Adrenaline. Now if you look at the box cover here of Sanctum, you can kind of see maybe this looks a little bit like the Diablo character from the Diablo video game. And that is kind of what this game is. It's sort of Diablo the board game, and Philippe actually designed a game called Adrenaline that was sort of like Quake or Doom or some other first-person shooter, the board game. So he's kind of revisited some, I don't want to just call them tropes, but he's kind of visited video game tropes and then tried to really hone in on what makes them tick in a way and then translate that to a board game. Instead of just, extracting and picking at the theme, he's really getting down to what some of the core game mechanisms are in those video games and really translating them right to a board game. So without too much further to do, let's look at actually those mechanics in some detail, and then I will come back and give you my thoughts. Okay, so I've laid out various pieces of this game. This is a hard one to kind of film and shoot, just because the layout of your table is going to look pretty specific, and it works great, to be honest, in terms of actually playing the game, but to film the game is a little bit tricky. So the first thing we're going to talk about are these boards here, and these are double-sided. You can see you've got different terrain and little spots that players are going to be moving around. This one here says it's Act 1, so this is the first board that players will start off on their journey. And then down here you've got Act 2. Now you can see with this one it says you don't use this in a two-player game because you have different sort of lengths and the number of spaces scale based on the number of players. So in a two-player game, you just have this one lead into the next one and so on. Now in the back of these, you've got some really cool things, like here's the kind of the final Diablo-looking boss there. You've got this other kind of mountainous terrain, I think on the back of this one here. This is sort of like the gate to get to the final boss. So as you sort of play the game, you're going to be moving along this track here. You move on to the next one, and then you just slide this one out of the way and then add another one on top of that. So at most you need, just two of these boards out on the table at a time. But for example, we'll just set this one out here to start with. Now the other thing the game comes with are these four characters, and they come with these plastic miniatures. So here we've got kind of the barbarian character. We have kind of your traditional rogue gal there. And then you also have kind of a thief or rogue type character here. Take a good look at that miniature. And then you have somewhat of a wizard gal here. Let's take a look at her. So you've got those four characters, and they each come with their own kind of character dashboard. So just to give you kind of a general idea, here's the barbarian slot, and these are nice kind of fold boards that you can stick easily in your box. There's the wizard, and so on. They've got similarly laid out functions here. So let's take a closer look at the barbarian. So the game comes with a stack of these skill cards, as well as these skill tiles here. And you're going to lay these out very specifically based on the icon of the character. So you can see this matches the barbarians. This is level 3 blue skill, for lack of a better word. So we'll lay these out, and you can see these laid out like so. So let's zoom in a little bit closer here. And these are going to be completely unique across the various characters. And the one thing to note here is these gems that you can see along the top of each of these, whether it's a tile or a card. So for example, we're going to start this off with two blue gems in that case on there, and we're going to have a green gem on this one. We're going to have two red gems on this one, like so. And each of these stacks is going to correspond to those different colored gems. Now some of these are going to have wild gems. So you can see this one describes two green gems and then this white gem. And the white gem, for most of the game, is going to be considered a wild of any of those colors. So we'll lay the rest of these out like so. And the other thing is, based on the starting order of the game, you might get a free potion like so. And sometimes during the course of the game, if you don't buy a potion directly and you get a random potion, you actually coin flip that up and you'll see which kind of colored potion it is. That's going to go down here in one of your four potion slots there. So you're limited to those 4 potion slots to start the game. And you're also going to theoretically get one of these cards off of this deck here. And this could just be a little starting bonus. This says red 3. So you look at your red 3 here, and you can move up one of your red gems. So you say, oh, that's a little bit of a bonus, because you're trying to move these gems up and off of these cards. Now, over the course of the game, as you fight and kill things, it will allow you to move these gems off. And once you do, and it's completely clear, you can take a look at this and read this. It says, once per attack, set an extra die to a hit, yada, yada, yada. You flip this over and you'll stick this over here into one of your skill slots, and that's how you level up. And as you notice here, this one actually has a die on it, and each player is going to have one skill that has this silver pipped die that sits on top of it, and then when you unlock it, you'll have now access to that dice. Now, one thing to note about leveling up, you can sort of level up these gems how you want. So over the course of the game, if it tells me to level up 2 reds, I could grab 2 reds off of this card, move them up to here, or I could take the 2 reds off of there and then get the access to this ability. And as I start to move up other ones up later and later, they still move up into these spots, but what you're trying to do is get them up into this pool here, and you can spend these to equip items and use them for different abilities. So the order and the process through leveling these up, you can change your approach to that from game to game, to kind of maybe you do all the level 1 abilities early, or you do all the level 3 ones early, or you mix and match and you do the green level 1 and then the blue level 3, and then that makes it that much harder to unlock the other ones theoretically. So that's an interesting kind of way you can sort of play around with like your little tech tree for your character. Now, these cards and things are usually skills, and there's also a special, let's call it like your super feat or super ability slot, which we'll talk about in a minute. But sometimes you have these tiles here, and these are going to add little balls to your pool. So sometimes you'll have stamina, which is red, or down here you'll have focus, which is blue, which we'll take a look at. So the barbarian here, you can see they start with 3 of these little discs, these little balls in their stamina pool, and then you also start with 2 of these here in your focus pool. But if you want to unlock this ability here, that will just tell you, hey, add 2 more reds to this pool. So now you can use abilities on your turn, and when you use abilities, you can just move them. So maybe you move this to block damage, you move this one to add or subtract 1 from a die, and so on. So that's what those are for. I'll talk more about that in detail when we talk about how you take your turn. But that's basically how your dashboard works. You might get items and things like that. In here, you can see this is a new sword. You can see it's got the indication there that it goes into one of your sword slots, like so. So instead of just a plus or minus 1, maybe we upgrade that. We get +1, and we can also use a purple, which is basically, it's telling you you can use a red or a blue to activate that slot, and that will subtract 2 from a die, and so on. So this is basically how your dashboard works. So let's talk about how a turn works and kind of the overall point of the game. Well, during the course of your game, you can either move, fight, or rest. The first action that every player has to do on the very, very first turn of the game for them has to be move. And that's simply going to be moving your figure and putting it on the first spot available to you. And so at this point, we're going to deal out some sets of monsters. You can see this says to deal out 5 sets of a pair of these level 1 monsters. So we'll draw 2 cards off of that deck here. And we have here, these are the 2 level 1s. And you're just going to kind of scatter them around the board here. So grab 2 more, because remember it says to do 5 sets. So we have this set out here. We'll just keep going until we have the 5 sets kind of wandering around the wilderness out here on the board. Not very good shuffle here, because I have a bunch of greens all in a row there. So the next and final part of your move step, after you move there, is to choose one of these sets. And I'm just going to go ahead and choose this set. So we're going to put these now onto our dashboard. And so the next player to come along here, let's say the ranger comes along, they're going to move to the next available spot in front of the line. So this says deal out another pair, like so, and then we'll stick that out here onto the board, and then they will get to choose from one of the 5 available monster sets. So maybe we'll choose this one here. So there's always going to be 5 available for you. So your move action is simply move and then choose one of the things that are out there. Now, they're not always going to be pairs. You can see this one has a little bit bigger of an icon. This is actually a level 2 monster. And when you land on that spot, this is just going to come out by itself. And so that could be a set that you choose. And as you progress later into the game, you might get a pair of a level 2 and a level 3 monster that you have to deal out. And you can see these have more dice that you have to use to defeat them. They do more damage. than these level 1 monsters here. And these are just going to simply, when you defeat them, level you up a little bit and also convert into items. And you can see this is a level 1 item. It's a level 1 monster, gives you a level 1 item. A level 2 monster will give you a level 2 item because there's 2 gems and 3 and so on. They give you more abilities and stuff. Now the other rule to moving is, let's say green moved again. And then when red moves, he's not going to go to the next free spot. He jumps all the way to the next available spot that's open in front of whoever's in the lead. So you're always jumping and leapfrogging ahead. So if green moved twice for some reason, then when red goes, they're going to jump all the way to the right in front of green. And that might come into play a little bit more, you know, with a multiplayer game. Now the last thing to note is at the end of each of these boards is a little treasure icon, and it works pretty much the same. You just move there, deal out a new set, in this case just a single monster, and then you choose one of your sets. And then you're going to reveal all of the cards that are still on the board and just flip them over to their item side. And then in the order of the player figures as they kind of are moved down this line, you're going to choose and just add one of these items directly into your inventory. So this basically is somebody discovering the treasure and everybody kind of looting the treasure at the end, and you don't have to kill any of these particular monsters. So that's movement. Now let's talk about fighting. So as you move through the game, you're going to add these monsters that you're collecting as you move to this part of your dashboard. And when you choose to take a fight action, you're going to roll dice and try to match exactly all of these pips here. Now to start the game, everybody starts off with 2 dice in their inventory. And of course you can unlock them through various different skills. Players will also start with 1 die here with a wild gem on top of that. I'll explain how to get that in a second. But let's not make it too hard on our starting adventure. Let's say we just roll our 2 dice here like that. So we have here a 4 and a 6. And so you're trying to get it exactly right. So in this case, you would want to use your ability down here of this +1. And we'll say we'll use that and we'll upgrade here this 4 to a 5 like so. And then let's say we had used up all our different abilities. So we can't actually match this die. So any monsters that you filled up their dice with, let's say we had a level 2 here and we decided to apply both of these here, you're going to kill them and they're going to go away and they're going to turn into some energy for you to level up as well as a weapon. Anything that you didn't defeat is going to do this much damage to you. You can see these little blood droplets there. So if you left it like this, this guy would be defeated. This would do 1, 2, 3 damage to you. And you have a hit point tracker over here that you're going to use. And if you run to 0 hit points, you lose and you're out of the game. If for some reason, let's say we just had this monster here and we're able to hit that die, but not this other die, we couldn't quite, you know, manipulate our dice to get there. What you're going to do, he's still going to hit you for his 2 because you didn't outright defeat him. Then on your next turn, next time you fight, this will have been marked off, and then you can roll your dice and you just have to get whatever you haven't marked off at that point. Now when you kill it, you're going to look at the color here, and this is going to tell you to level up a red gem, which we showed earlier during the setup. And so, oh, we level up a red gem, that means we could just move up 1 red gem there, or maybe we could do a wild instead if we wanted. And then you're going to flip the card over here and put this up here into your inventory, at which point you could then equip it during a rest action. Now before we talk about rest, I just wanted to talk about one more thing which I blew through when I was talking about in the fight. So you're going to use some of these gems to manipulate your dice here like so. And then if you have any damage that's coming at you left over, of course, you can block this one to block 1 damage. You could move 2 down here to block 2 damage and so on. Now the first thing you're going to do when you actually do rest is take all of these little balls off of here and put them back into the pool. You're going to clear those off. And then you can equip some of these items here. So this one you can see, oh, this requires a red gem. So let's get rid of this that we just had there as an example. So this one here, it's got a little jewelry symbol. We want this is going to give us another stamina to add. So we're going to put it in our jewelry slot, but we need to take one of our gems that we've leveled up here by moving up and mark that like so. So there's sort of a cost, like a socket requirement if you ever play you know, World of Warcraft or Diablo, you have like gems that you sock into the items. All the items have these sort of sockets that you need to put the gems into. And then over the course of the game, you might have extra items that you don't really want. You can take and discard those and then trade them in to get a potion like so. And you can also swap items. So if I wanted to unequip this, this gem will go back into my pool up there, and then this will also go back into my inventory, which I could then sell for a potion. And then maybe I equip a new item, like maybe I wanted to equip, you know, this ring here instead, and hopefully I have a blue item, a blue gem in that case, to use that. So you don't lose the gems if you unequip the items. Now the last thing to talk about here are these potions, and before you start a fight, you can use these potions to sort of restore one of these balls that you used before. So maybe I don't really feel like resting because I haven't done a whole lot, but I really want to be able to reuse this blue focus here. I could discard that blue potion, that will go in there. You do that before you roll any dice and start your attack. And that's how these potions work basically. You use them just prior to fighting and restore maybe just a couple of these balls here. Now the last thing to kind of talk about with your turn is after you fight or rest, you're going to check for achievements. So let's look at the achievement board. Now here's the achievement board. This is set up for 2 players. In the 3 and 4 player game, you'll have achievements in all these slots. 2 players, you randomly assign dice to the slots instead of these actually achievement emblems here, which give you abilities on the back. Now the way that you get these is through basically manipulating your character dashboard. So the first time that somebody has 3 of these either skill cards or these little skill tiles removed from their board and added to their dashboard, the first one to get to 3 will get this reward. In this case, it's a die. Then the first player to get 5 of these skill things unlocked will get this, and then 7 will get this achievement. Here is once you have 2 different of these gems off of your board, so 2 reds and 2 greens, or 2 blues and 2 greens, or whatever, you get this achievement. Once you have 2 different sets of 3, 2 different sets of 4 gems, then you get these different achievements here. And these are just your item levels here. So again, the levels of the items are just indicated by the number of gems. So you just count the number of gems on equipped items that you've got, and then you'll get these. Now the first person to get a level 2 sort of tier of achievement gets this one. The first person to get a level 3 tier gets that one there. And these all kind of work together because you're getting gems off of these to unlock these, and then, you know, then that will allow more gems to be available into your pool and on your items. And then these, you know, of course, once you start to get them in your pool, then you're going to be able to equip items a little bit easier. So that's the achievement. You check those after you do a rest or a fight. And then this little marker here, this will actually go onto the Act 5 board, and each of the boards sometimes we'll have these little sort of angel icons on here, and you just find the little spot where it's drawn on the board, and then you put a number of dice equal to the number of players, and the first player that moves to the spot with it that this is attached to, everybody will get 1 die out of that. So the angel's kind of coming down and sort of bestowing blessings on you, and that's what these achievements are. And you save these actually when you get these till the final round of the final boss fight, and these are going to give you like little shields that you can spend. They're going to give you, you know, abilities to manipulate your dice, and they're also going to give you these little like stamina or focus potions. So that's pretty much the gist of the game. Now I could go and explain also the final boss fight here on this board, as well as how this particular board works here. Let's zoom out a little bit. So you can see this just has 1 spot for each fighter to move in, and then sort of the gate spot up there. It's not super complicated. I did play the boss fight wrong a couple of times, so just make sure you read through that carefully. I'll talk a little bit more about it in the review, but all of what I told you there is going to get you going right up until that boss fight. Once you do that, and this is what we did when we played it, we stopped, we paused, we read through the steps for being at the gate, and then we read for the steps. Once that was breached, we read through the steps for playing against the boss, and played that wrong, but then we figured it out afterwards. But basically you're going to be dealing with these little decks of cards here. These are sort of dual purpose cards. You have like a whole row of both of these cards like lined out here in front of each player, and you kind of fight them, fight the boss all together, but you're trying to sort of make it. So players will probably be dying at this point in the game, and then if anybody makes it through that final boss, you'll be kind of moving your player down these cards here. Then whoever has the most hit points left of those that are alive will win the game. And if everybody dies, which is definitely possible, then it'll be whoever made it kind of furthest along this little trail here. But it's the same kind of rules for combat, except you're sort of getting as far as you can, resting, and then getting a whole bunch of damage back at you that you're trying to absorb. But you'll be super equipped at that point in trying to, make the best use of that and trying to figure out, sometimes these will flip over and they'll do some kind of nasty effect to you. You have to kind of choose to take a hit point loss or, corrupt some ability or something like that. So it's not super complicated, but this video is long enough as it is. Okay, so that is Sanctum. Let's hit my 3 pillars of review. First one we'll talk about is playtime. The box says 90 minutes plus, and I would say, yeah, I think a 2 and 3 player game will be about that ballpark. 4 player game is going to go a little bit longer, I think about 2 hours. Just because there's a lot you can kind of do in your turn and manipulate your player dashboard and stuff and try to figure out, manipulate dice and which abilities to spend and, which thing to level up and which thing to equip. And so I wouldn't say there's a lot of AP, but there's a lot of little decision points like, should I do this or this? Okay, if I do that, then I should do this and I should get this potion and And then kind of heading into the boss fight, which I talked briefly about, there could be a little bit of AP and stuff there. So I think a 4 player game is going to go a little bit longer. Now I've played it in terms of player count, 2 and 4 players. I mostly prefer 2 player. And here's the thing with the player count. Now the game plays pretty much the same. It scales nicely. So you've got more boards you're going across, but you're moving up the boards much quicker with more players because you're kind of leapfrogging each other. And the game scales perfectly. The experience isn't going to be that drastically different in terms of the mechanics and all the monsters that are available and everything like that with the player counts. For me though, I really preferred the 2 player count because the game really is a race to get the achievements and unlock those and get to the point where you have sort of enough equipment and you've leveled up enough to deal with that final boss. Now the achievements are not really like the end all be all of the game. If you miss out on a couple of achievements, yeah, I mean, it's okay. The other player will have some more special abilities and stuff than you in the final battle. But that's not going to make or break the game. The game is going to be won or lost by how efficiently you kind of level up all those skills and you go after and get a good sort of combination of items that kind of complement you and your skills and everything like that. That's really what's going to win or lose the game. Then the achievements can kind of be that little that needle twister to just get you right over the hump or something in certain situations in that last battle. But when you're playing with 4, I don't really care what everybody else is doing. It's so much. I can't watch everybody's dashboard and see what they might do on their next turn, where maybe I want to leap up here and steal that monster. And then, do I rest now? Or maybe I can just do another fight because I've only got 1 monster left. And so the timing stuff, it's like, 4 players it's just kind of too much to really take in, and it almost doesn't even matter. Whereas in a 2 player game, there's a good back and forth in terms of the pace of the game. They do this, I do that, they do this. I'm like, well, now I can really rest, and maybe I want to be the first to jump that treasure space. Again, that's not the end of the world. If I'm second to pick a free treasure, it's not that big a deal. But for me, just the amount that I can kind of consume and sort of compose in my mind all at once is much easier and more fun to do as a 2 player game. Now I did like the 4 player game I played because when we all got to the final boss, I would say I would nod in favor of 4 player for that experience because it was like we were all fighting like a big raid in like a massively multiplayer online RPG because you all felt like you were fighting like a different part of this big boss and dealing with one person was looking at the tail because when you flip over one of the cards he said he got a tail whip and stuff, and so it was like you felt like you were fighting a Nixia if you've ever played World of Warcraft. You're all kind of taking over different parts, and that was really kind of a neat aspect of the game. But yeah, so that's kind of the player count thing. I really do prefer it with 2 players because it's just good back and forth. There's not a lot of downtime waiting for my turn, that kind of stuff. And, but I still there was some stuff I really liked about it with 4 players. It had a kind of an epic sweep to it with all the character classes in play that the 2 player doesn't really have. Now, in terms of what is this game like, I do not know I can't think of a game. I think somebody said that reminded them of Role Player. If you've ever played that game where it's like you're just kind of rolling up the stats for your character, and that's pretty much what the game is about. This kind of has that kind of vibe for sure, but it still does feel in this case like you're going on like a real adventure, real kind of like, it feels like you're playing Diablo in a lot of ways, because you're managing your inventory. That's like the game. I mean, that sounds like it would be boring, but it's really not, because you have like these gems that you're leveling and you're getting skills, and then you're using those same gems to equip stuff and unequip stuff and respend the gems over here and do all that kind of funky stuff. And that's just, the game is like really in your dashboard, because you're just using that track to just move your character and collect monsters, which go right on your dashboard. You don't really spend any time interacting with the wilderness or doing anything. It's very much like a hack and slash feel. Oh, these two monsters in front of me, hit, spend stuff, cool ability, dice combo thing, and then, you're just in that dashboard the whole game. I guess Role Player, you could put it there, but they're very, very different games. And that's the one thing I liked about this, and I liked about Adrenaline, was it's a very cool kind of neat experience to see, like, okay, if I had to bake in kind of the leveling up the tech tree, in managing your inventory, and sort of the whole like arc of like gearing up your character like you do in World of Warcraft or Diablo for like a final boss fight. This really like distilled all that down to a lot of these cool board game mechanics and the essence of that. It doesn't get like lost in, well, let's make a D&D-ish type of game with a Diablo theme. Like you could make a game that was like Descent and then made it more Diablo themey and be like, well, we're playing Diablo. Well, no, you're playing like a D&D light thing that has like more, grim dark demons. So it's not, this is like, I'm playing a video game, as a board game. So it goes after the video game part of it. And that's just the cool thing. It's just different, And it's a very kind of like pleasing sort of Pavlov dog lever thing like this, which is like what most video games end up being a lot of times, where it's like you're just hitting a mouse button or whatever, and then just like getting cool explosions on the screen and stuff, and leveling up your guy, like ding, endorphin rush, ding, endorphin rush, ding, endorphin rush. I'm level 2, I'm level 3, I'm level 4, I hit my talent cap, I have a full set of this gear. It's like endorphin rush. And this is really like, I'm like, oh, they just made a board game out of that like endorphin rush thing. It's like killed monster, loot, a level up item, swap item, and so it's just hitting all those endorphin moments in a board game. So that's just kind of a cool, neat thing. Like it's just interesting to me that they tried to do that, and it really does work. And the last thing I want to kind of talk about is the way the arc of it works really well as also, because you kind of start off at the docks and you go journey through and you get into these mountains and you get to this like demonic temple, and then you have this flip over the board and you have this giant demonic boss, and you lay out all these cards. And so like in the 4-player game, everybody had these huge like row of cards around, and everybody's kind of working their way down the row, and it's just neat that players can and will die as they move along that track. And so that has a very kind of epic feel to how you progress, because the main game is like it's kind of samey, right? So you move, collect some monsters, fight them. Okay, that's a neat item that upgrades my ability. So it's kind of grindy, but I think that's intentional. It doesn't feel like a grind. Like I said, you're hitting those endorphin moments. But then you get to this boss, and you're like, oh, well, did I do everything right I should have done? Like, am I geared up enough? Do I have, enough stuff to block the damage that's inevitably going to be hit at me? Do I have enough manipulation of dice? All this kind of stuff. Do I have enough where I can sort of absorb some hits and all that? So it just kind of ends in this very kind of climactic, satisfying way. Again, another endorphin rush. So it's a weird, funky game, and I really do enjoy it. Do I recommend it for folks? I'm like, well, I don't know. Do you like playing Diablo, and do you like playing board games? I mean, if you do, then I think you'd probably get a kick out of this. So it's just one of those cool like endorphin lever things that they've just pushed into cardboard, and the art and everything and all that stuff, the design of it, the rules and the layout, all works really, really well. Anyway, so that is Sanctum. Definitely recommend folks take a look at it. Thanks.